All right, guys, so today what we're going to be doing is we are going to be able to explain the size of a product, and we're going to actually be able to relate it to a decimal, a fraction to a decimal, and just kind of watch what I do, and this will kind of start to make a lot of sense, okay? So this first one, what we're doing is we're just kind of looking at what we have here, and we are basically having to fill in this missing fraction that we have, okay? And then we're going to use our words to compare the size of the product, okay? So this first one, it's already been done for you, and it says I've got 1/4 times 1. But what they did was they did 1/4 times 3/3, which is still 1, okay? But my answer is 3/12. So when I think about it, what is the difference between 1/4 and 3/12? Okay? Over here, I have 3/4 times 1. I've got 3/4 times, I've got to figure this out. So I'm going to think 21/28. So right now what I'm going to kind of think is 3 times what gives me 21? And 4 times what gives me 28? Well, if you think about it, 3 times 7 is 21, and 4 times 7 is 28. Okay? So now I have 3/4 and I have 21/28. Okay? Same thing here, I have 7/4. Multiply it by 1, but now I've got 7/4 times, and I've got to figure out what am I going to multiply this by to get 35/20. Well, when I think about 7 times what gives me 35 and 4 times what gives me 20, it's going to be the number 5. Okay, now if you guys are sitting here thinking, okay, I don't understand why, because this would still be 1, this would not be 1. Okay, because right now, guys, what you technically did, yes, 5/5 is going to equal 1, but I'm not multiplying it by 1, okay? I've increased it to 5/5, which, yes, does equal 1, but it's completely different when I multiply this because it's not going to be basically going 7/4. So when I think about it, let's kind of go back to letter A, and I'm going to draw this diagram. So here is 1/4, and remember, if I'm going to be comparing it, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here's 1/4. Okay, this one needs to be 3/12. So when I do this, this is going to be my half. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't do that one. I need to make these a little bit more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If I were to color this in to show me 3/12, that looks pretty close to being the same equivalent fraction. Okay, so even though we have multiplied it by bigger numbers, it's still going to be that equivalent fraction and going to be the same. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to express each fraction as an equivalent decimal, and you guys can do this. You have to remember that when I do this as an equivalent decimal, I have tenths, which equals, so I'm just going to say 1/10. Okay, 1/10, when I write it, it equals 1.1, or it's going to be 1/10. So that means that if I want to convert a fraction into a tenth, I just have to make sure my denominator is 10. Okay, if I have a hundredth, that's going to equal 0.01, and that also equals 1/100th. So that when I do this, if I want to make that into a hundredth, then that means that my decimal or my denominator needs to be 100. Then I have a, sorry guys, I'm running out of room and I don't want to use the space here because I do have to do my work here. I'm just going to add this right here. So if I'm going to have 1,000th, that is this looks like 0.001, but then that also equals 1/1000. And that would mean that my denominator needs to be 1,000. Okay, so right now they've kind of done this first one for us, and they said 4 times 25. Well, that's going to give me a hundredth. Okay, because I can't do 4 to get 10, so I've got to do it by 100. So I'm just going to basically multiply across. I've got 25, because 1 times 25 is 25, and then 4 times 25 is 100. So this is 25 hundredths. And to write that in decimal form, it's going to be 0.25. Okay, this goes back to what you know from Module 1, and a little bit of module 2, okay? So same thing over here. I've got the same thing. I've got 3 times 25 and then 4 times 25. Well, I know that 3 times 25 is 75 because 25, 50, 75, $1 when I'm counting by quarters. 4 times 25 is still going to be that 100. That's going to equal 75 hundredths, and to write that in decimal form, it is 75 hundredths, okay? Now this one has not been done for us. I've got 1 times 1/5. So I need to figure out, what am I gonna have my denominator be? Well, because it's a 5, I'm gonna make that into a 10th. So I can multiply both of these by 2, because remember, whatever I do to the denominator, I also have to do to the numerator. So now I can just go ahead and multiply straight across. I have 2, then 5 times 2 is tenths. It's 2/10, which is written as a decimal point and 2. Okay, 4/5, I'm going to keep the same thing. I'm going to make it into a 10th. So I'm going to do 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 5 times 2 is 10. So it's 8/10, or a decimal point and then 8. Okay, 20. So I can't make it into a 10, but I can make it into 100. Now, most of these you guys can make into 1,000, but we just want to make sure that we're always doing the smallest one. And I'm kind of looking at all these problems. I don't know if you're ever going to have to make it into 1,000th. We'll see if on the back side it is, but looking at all of these, you're either going to turn it into a 10th or you're going to turn it into 100th. Okay, so this one I can't turn it into a 10, but I can turn it into 100. So I'm going to multiply this by 5, because I know that 5 times 20 is going to give me 100. So it's going to be 5 hundredths, and 5 hundredths equals 0.05. Okay, same thing here, 27, I've got to multiply it by 5. Okay, now this is one where, because we are converting it into a decimal, it has to keep 100 as that denominator. So this is something where you cannot go and simplify this, okay? So no simplification is occurring on any of these, just because we have to keep it in that decimal form. So I need to do 27 times 5. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 3, okay. So this is 135 hundredths, okay? And to write that in decimal form, it's going to be 1 and 35 hundredths, okay? Because remember, that hundredth is going to be, that 5 is where that hundredths place value is going to be, and because there is a 1 here, it's going to be a whole number. Now you can also look at this and notice that this is actually an improper fraction, and so we do have a 1, and then if we actually would turn this into a mixed number, it would actually be 1 and then 35 hundredths, and so that's how I have that 1 and 35 hundredths. Okay, so this next one is 7/4. I know that I can make, oh, I can't make 10, can I? So what I'm going to have to do is on 7/4, I'm going to have to make 100. And so to be able to get 100, let's see here. What would I multiply that by? Let's see here. I've got 100 divided by 4. That goes in 2 minus, oh, it's going to be 25, like 25 4/4. Okay, so I have to multiply both of those by 25. So my denominator is going to be 100. And here's the thing, guys, I actually already know that I am going to have a whole number, because this is an improper fraction, and it is going to be a 1, and then I'm going to have my decimal spot. But I need to do 7 times 25. So I'm actually going to do 25 times 7. 14, 15, 16, 17. So this is 175 hundredths. And because this is an improper fraction, guys, I do have that whole number. And then it would be 75 hundredths. So I'd write it as 1.75. Okay? You can also think about it as when you have 175 divided by 100. Well, that goes in one time. And you have 75 hundredths left over. Okay? This one, I know I can make a 10th, so I'm going to multiply this by 2. I'm going to get 16 tenths, which 16th tenths is 1 and 6 tenths. Same thing, guys, because I know that this is an improper fraction. If I turn it into a mixed number, it would be 1 and 6 tenths. And then that's how I have 1 and 6 tenths, okay? 25, I'm going to multiply this by 4 because I know that 4 25s is going to give me 100. And I need to do 24 times 4. And I'm going to come over here, 24. You guys can't really see that. Times 4, 96. So it's 96 hundredths, and to write 96 hundredths, it is going to be a decimal point 96. Now, if you still are confused as to how to put this into a decimal, get your place value chart out. You know that you're going to write 96 hundredths, and that 6 needs to end on that hundredths. 50, oh nice, I'm just going to multiply it by 2. Okay, because that's going to give me 100. And then it's 93 times 2. It is 186. And it's 186 hundredths, and I already know because that is an improper fraction, it's going to be 1 and 86 hundredths. Okay, now these ones, these actually have that number pulled out that I could turn this into an improper fraction, and I probably would, just because you want to make sure, and actually no, you don't have to. I would leave it as this and just know that I am just changing this fraction to make it into that 100, okay, because it needs to be that hundredths. So I'm going to have 2, and then my new fraction is going to be 24 hundredths, and to write this in decimal form, it's 2 and 24 hundredths. Okay, same thing over here. I'm just going to multiply this by 2 to get 100 as my fraction so that I can turn it into a decimal. My whole number is going to stay the same. I didn't do anything with it. 31 times 2 is 62 hundredths. And then I'm just going to turn it into that decimal, which is 3 and 62 hundredths. Okay, guys, pretty simple. All you have to do is just remember how you write that, how do you write a decimal? And you guys just have to create either it be a tenth or a hundredth. And if you're like, well, how do you know? You just basically have to look at that denominator and can I turn it into a tenth or can I turn it into a hundredth? And so that's kind of what you guys want to do. If you can turn it into the tenth, leave it in a tenth. Don't necessarily put it into that hundredth.